Good afternoon, everybody. Agenda item number 1, to receive apologies for absence. I have one for Councillor Mrs Davis. Sorry. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press in attendance and those who are watching the live stream of this meeting via YouTube. Whilst this meeting is being held publicly in a COVID-19 secure manner, it is also being streamed via YouTube. Minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on YouTube until such time the minutes are produced. Please be aware that only audio from the microphones will be captured on the live stream. Therefore, those invited to speak need to ensure their microphones are on when speaking and are as close to the member as possible. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, can all present keep their microphones off except when invited to speak? Please ensure that the microphone is switched off when you have finished speaking. I would also like to remind members to make sure their mobile phones are on silent or turned off for the duration of the meeting. Please be aware that the cameras will be on all times during this meeting. There is always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience should we do. Should this occur, an adjournment will be declared until the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. Agenda item number 1 is apologies for absence. I have one absence for Councillor Ms Davis.
Thank you, Chair. We've also had apologies from Councillor Booth, Councillor French, Councillor Tierney and Councillor Hewlett. Thank you.
With that in mind, with Councillor Mrs Davis being absent, we'll temporarily elect Councillor Bob Wicks as Vice Chair for the meeting. Everyone happy with that? Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is to confirm and sign the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 29th of November. Do I have a proposer to approve the minutes on the 29th of November? Councillor Mr Bennett. Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Hoy. Thank you. Does any member have any comments or amendments to make to these minutes? I believe, Peter, you do?
Yes, thanks, Chair. Under on the first page, ARMC 3221, on the paragraph where it says Councillor Wicks questioned, I think where it says whether the necessary correction in procedures had been noted would be useful. And under the AMRC 3521, it's the first paragraph under members' comments, it's Barclays with a C, not Barclays with a K.
Thank you. Can I have a show of hands to approve these minutes, please? Thank you very much. The minutes of the meeting on the 29th of November 2021 are agreed. Agenda item number 3 is to report additional items for consideration which the Chairman deems urgent by virtue of special circumstances now to be specified. I believe there are none. Agenda item number 4, to receive any declarations of interest under the local code of conduct in respect of any items to be discussed at this meeting. If you have anything to declare, please raise your hand. No, thank you. Agenda item number 5, annual auditor's annual report 2020-2021. I'll pass you over to Mark Saunders to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have here the auditor's annual report for 2020-21. This is essentially just a summary of all the work the auditors have done during the year 2020-21, or for the year 2020-21. And if we look at page 11 and 12, that essentially sort of summarises the work they've done and what their conclusions have been for that work that they have carried out. And you'll recognise quite a few of them because they've been presented to this committee during the year. In terms of the financial statements, going concern, consistency of information, the consistency of annual governance statement, all of those issues were covered in the audit results report, which was presented to this committee at the last meeting on the 29th of November. And you'll see that in terms of the financial statements, an unqualified opinion has been given by the auditors. And consequently, they issued their report on the accounts on the 29th of November. So that's essentially been signed off for that. The one area there in terms of value for money, in terms of the audit results report, there were some provisional statements in terms of the value for money work, which they were still ongoing at that time. But they produced some draft wording in that report. The final version of their report is attached here in section 4, and I'm pleased to say there's been no changes to what they presented before, and consequently they have nothing to report to committee in terms of value for money. You see, there's one there at the bottom of the page on page 11 where it talks about public interest report and other audit powers. There have been nothing that the auditors have had to do in terms of that, so they've had no reason to use their auditor powers in terms of those issues. And on page 12, as it says there on the first outcome, the majority of the work the audit have done have been consolidated into their audit results report, which was presented to the last committee. There's just one piece of work relating to 2021 which they haven't completed yet, and that is in regards to the whole of government account submission. This is because the NAO, the National Audit Office, have yet to issue the guidance for that. It's an interminable process which just drags on and on and on. Quite what the use of it is, we're not quite sure, but we're ready for it to be submitted for the auditors to do their work. They've just got to get the required procedures sorted out. We're not expecting any issues with that. It's merely them going through the procedures they have to do to sign off the whole of government accounts return that we submit. So once they've done that, they will actually issue the certificate they're required to do in accordance with the acts there that are mentioned in the outcomes report there. So that's just the one issue that's still to be resolved, but we're not expecting any particular problem with that as we go through. So all in all, I mean, it goes into some detail. Most of that you will have seen before in terms of the detail of the report. But obviously, it's a very good report in terms of the overall audit work they carried out during 2021. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a proposer for this report, please? Councillor Wicks. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Benny. Thank you. And now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just as Section 151 officer, I'd like to, the report is great. I'm really pleased with the report, and I would just like to thank Mark and his team for all their efforts to make sure everything was in place for the auditors, no issues arising. So I'd really like that on record. Thank you very much.
I'd like to echo that. Thank you for everyone's hard work. Any further comments? The committee to note the independent external auditors report 2020 to 2021. Please raise your hand if you agree to note in this letter. Thank you, members. Agenda item number 6, external audit appointment process. And now call.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 6 on your page 37 of your agenda packs covers the future arrangements for appointing our external auditors. Public Sector Auditor Appointments Limited, the PSAA, currently appoint our external auditors and our arrangements with them are going to come to an end after the end of the 22-23 audit cycle. The report I brought to you today sets out the options we have to appoint our auditors for the period 2023-24 to 2027-28. We have 2 options. The first is to create our own appointing panel, which must have a majority of independent members, including an independent chair and at least 3 members. The second option is to join the sector-led body, so the PSAA, who will appoint auditors on our behalf, and this is the arrangement that we currently use. So for the last period, 498 bodies opted into the PSAA's arrangement, and only 11 bodies chose to appoint their own panel. This option is a nationally authorised scheme, and the scale of the bodies opting in allows them to access large economies of scale. They aim to appoint the same auditors for our partners we have formal collaborations with, and the PSAA are able to manage our relationships with our auditors and to prevent any overcharging, and will challenge any fee increases. So a lot of this is covered off in the body of the report, which I'm hoping that you've had a chance to read. If we want to opt in to the PSAA's arrangements, we must notify them. They've issued us with a formal invitation to opt in, and we must notify them by the 11th of March. In order to opt in, we need to get full council to sign this off. So the reason this has come to the Audit and Risk Management Committee is in order for you to make that recommendation, as you are the ones who monitor and review the work of the external auditors. I'm happy to take any questions. I think the chair will read out the recommendations that the report makes. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Can I have a proposer for this report, please? Councillor Meekins. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Wicks. Thank you, councillors. I now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments to make. Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've read the report that's in front of us, and to be truthful, it doesn't seem like we have much of an option. I think the opting in is most certainly the preferred method there. It would be complicated, it would be expensive, and we've got no trust or no track record of whether it's proven and it works. We have with EA doing the audit work for us as the external auditors, and certainly for myself, that would be the recommendation that I would be looking to follow today.
Thank you, councillor. Do you want to come in? Okay. Any other comments?
Given the history over the last 3 years, a lot of obstacles have been overcome during that period of time, and I think it's fair to say that this year has been very smooth, both for the officers and the auditors to actually come and present their recommendations. So I would fully support the option 2 recommendation to the council.
Any other comments? There are no further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to recommend to Council that Fenland District Council opt in to the PSAA sector-led auditor appointment arrangements for the Council, subject to receiving a satisfactory invitation to opt into the PSAA's appointing person arrangements, and to delegate acceptance of the invitation to the Corporate Director and Chief Finance Officer as the Council Section 151 officer. Please raise your hands if you agree to recommend this approach for 2023-24 to 2028-2029 to be considered by full council. Thank you, members. Agenda item number 7 is the Treasury Management Strategy Statement, Capital Strategy, Minimum Revenue Provision Policy Statement, and Annual Investment Strategy 2022-2023. I now call upon Mark to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chairman. That's easy for you to say. I'll just try and keep it to the Treasury Management Strategy, and, instead of expanding it, because I would be here all afternoon, all evening even. So this is the strategy statement for the coming year, 22-23. It's the first of 3 reports this committee will receive during the year regarding the Treasury Management function, and is by far the most important, as it sets the strategy and policy statements in terms of how we're going to manage the Treasury Management function during the coming year. In terms of the actual strategy and policies that are included in this report, they are virtually identical to the existing ones, and so they are just a continuation of what we're doing at the moment. There were no significant changes. However, you will note, if you've had time to read the report, in section 1, there's quite a bit of information there around changes to the zipper code and potential code, which was revised in 2021 in December, and which will come into adoption in the 2023-24 financial year, which will be obviously the next year. This time next year, we will need to incorporate all of those implications of the revised code into our strategy statement. Some of them will impact more than others in terms of how we actually go forward, but I'm not going into a lot of detail of those now, because we will go into those a lot more as we go through the year and in time for this time next year. So that's just really a heads up to say that there are changes in the offing. For 22-23, it is very much the same story as this year. So we just have a look at page 43. I'll just take you through some of the key issues of what's in this report. In paragraphs 2 to 3, part of the strategy is to determine a variety of prudential treasury indicators and various limits that determine how we actually carry out the function during the year. And they are the indicators and limits which we have to work within in terms of the whole treasury management function. And they're very much the same as they were this year in terms of borrowing limits, investment strategy, and whatever. They're detailed in various paragraphs, but paragraphs 2 to 13 of the report, you'll see them in various sections of various indicators that we have to comply with. Any deviations from those indicators during the year, once council have approved this, if they approve this, it's at the council meeting on the 24th of February, as part of the budget report. Once they approve that, any changes to those indicators during the year has to be also approved by council. So at the moment, we are well within all of those limits and indicators that we approved last year. So we're not anticipating any changes to those at this moment in time. The Mrp policy, which is the minimum revenue provision policy, that determines how much we actually pay off our external debt each year. We are obliged to actually make a prudent provision for repaying that debt. And those are detailed in section 6 of the report. The Mrp policy will be determined depending on what type of borrowing is undertaken and what our capital financing requirement is over the medium term. Obviously, the main function of the treasury management strategy is to make sure that the council has sufficient cash resources to meet all of its capital expenditure and all its operational cash flows during the year. And the strategy is actually organised so that we have sufficient cash resources. So we have an investment strategy, a borrowing strategy to ensure that we have the resources to meet all the expenditure going on in the year. And also what we do with any surplus cash that we have available in the year is part of our investment strategy. And part of the borrowing strategy is to make sure that where we need to borrow money, that we borrow it at the appropriate time and the appropriate rates and for the appropriate purpose. And all that is detailed in the report. One indicator which we haven't complied with for a number of years now is the indicator which says that gross debt shouldn't exceed the capital financing requirement for any length of time. That's because we have some leftover PWB debt from when we sold our council houses back in 2007. It's 2007. When you said 17, actually 2007. Nearly 15 years ago now. Gosh, blimey, remember it's still there. I was there at the time, and because it's still attracting excessive premiums in terms of how much it would cost to actually repay those loans, we still have them as external debt because it's not financially advantageous for us to pay them off, and so we don't actually comply with that indicator fully. As we go through the next 2 or 3 years over the medium term, when we're expected to increase the amount of borrowing that we need to actually meet our capital expenditure, then you'll see from the tables that we do start to comply with that indicator in the latter 2 years of the medium term plan. There's a figure there, which obviously it shows where, because of our requirement to actually borrow money over the medium term, our interest and finance lease payments will increase. But that is in line with what we were anticipating, also in line with our estimates of what we need to borrow for the commercial investment strategy in terms of actually taking that forward over the next 2 to 4 years. There is a section in the report about interest rates that has now been revised. Obviously, the day we produced this report, but just coincidence that they actually, the Monetary Policy Committee actually increased the bank base rate, which was great timing. So we did get a new update from Link to say what their forecasts are for interest rates going forward, and their latest estimate is that they're anticipating further bank base rate increases in March, May, and November of 0.25% each. So by the end of the calendar year this year, they're expecting the bank base rate to be 1.25%. Now, it does vary when you look at some of the other commentators that are out there, some of the other experts, but they're all predicting, between around about 1.25% by the end of this calendar year. So they're all expecting another 2 to 3 increase in the bank base rate this year. How much it will be, we'll wait and see. So that will obviously have a knock-on effect on investment interest rates going forward. But by how much will be obviously dependent on whether those interest rates actually happen. So we are currently revising the amount of investment interest that we are anticipating for next year based on the revised forecast. So the figure we've got at the moment is about £65,000 for investment interest for next year. So we're looking to revise that and to see what the latest cash flows position is looking like, and every likelihood that estimate will be revised upwards. Obviously, the figures have changed, the interest rates have changed, the prospects for them have changed, and the amount of investment interest rate may change, but the strategy behind achieving those interest rates doesn't change. And that's what's also detailed in the report about how we actually invest our surplus cash. That strategy is still the same, but obviously depending on what the interest rates are doing will affect the final investment interest rate, income that we receive. And we are currently working on that to incorporate that into the final budget report that's going to Cabinet and Council next week. We've got a couple of days to sort that out before we finalise the budget report. As stated earlier, the current medium-term plan strategy assumes that some external borrowing will be required over the 4-year period. If you carry out the commercial investment strategy as we planned, there will be significant additional borrowing, but most of that will be borrowing to Fenland Future Limited, the council's own company, which will obviously pay an interest rate back to the council, which will more than cover the interest rate that we will pay out on those loans. So we will get some benefit from that, and that benefit is actually being built into the medium-term plan as well. So the aim of the council's investment strategy is, as it always has been, to provide security investments while managing risk appropriately. You'll see in the report, there's a section which talks about specified and non-specified investments. The only real difference between the two is specified investments are for investments up to 1 year, and non-specified investments are anything over 1 year. But essentially, most of the options that you've got for investing in those remain the same. At the moment, we are going through a process of investing with property funds. We have had several presentations and doing a lot of due diligence on 6 property funds, which we're currently making a decision on who to go with for next year. We're hoping that we'll have £4 million invested in 2 property funds by the end of this year. So we'll get a full year's worth of investment interest in that for next year. And based on the current returns that they are achieving, it's somewhere between 3.5% and 4%. So we've assumed 150,000, which is 3.75% on 4 million. So that's what we've assumed. Obviously, it can be better, it could be worse than that. And the thing, obviously, to keep in consideration with property funds is that obviously your capital is at risk as well. So, but these are really well-managed funds really high rated funds that we are investing with. So we consider the capital risk to be quite small. But obviously the risk is still there. You never know what's going to happen in the next few years. And investment in property funds, that's why investment in property funds are a longer term investment of at least 5 years, that we will want to keep that money in there, just so that if there is a slight downturn, then it's got time to go back up again. But that's the capital value. The actual interest that these property funds have been earning, even during the downturn, what's been going on the last couple of years, has been reasonably static and reasonably good. But obviously the capital values do vary a lot. But that's what we intend to do. We're going through the process at the moment of what they call the onboarding process, which is a very complicated process of form filling and documentation that the property funds require for us to become part of their fund. But we are hoping to get all that done by the end of March this year. So we'll be up and running for next year. And finally, the capital strategy would normally be part of this, but we're still updating that. We've still got various things to update in terms of the overall program and the impact of various things. So you'll see that in terms of the final budget report that will go to council, which obviously is going to be dispatched on Wednesday. So you'll see that in the final version. But all that does is bring together all the capital stuff with that's in the budget, and how that relates to the various services and how we actually use capital to improve the service provision. So all that will be available later this week. And at that point, I'll take any questions members have.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a proposer for this report, please? Councillor Benny, thank you. Another seconder? Councillor Purser, thank you. Now open the item for discussion. Please raise your hand if you have any comments to make. Councillor Wicks.
It's, shall we say, a query clarification of the temporary investments on the last page. I noticed there are a number of them that are coming from maturity date. So presumably, with the wind in the right direction, these are all going to be renegotiated for better interest rates than are being catalogued at the moment.
At the moment,
Mark, your microphone's not on.
at the moment we've still got currently we've got around about the same sort of level of temporary investments being invested. So when they come up when they mature, we do try and reinvest them either with better interest rates, or it depends on what our cash flow requirements are the next few weeks, in terms of how long we invest them for. At the moment, those reinvestments that we've done for some of those maturity ones have actually been kept quite short, because we have a substantial amount of cash going out with the authority in the next month or so, in terms of repaying some reconciliation for business grants and things, and 631 grants from last year, which we have to pay out. So we sort of look at that in terms of the overall cash flow requirements in the next few weeks, and whether we need it for that period, or we put it out a bit longer, up to 3 to 6 months, depending on what the interest rates are. But the interest rates are slightly better than they were, so they are going the right way. But it's just a question of how quickly that will happen, if any new base rates come into effect.
Any other comments, members? Councillor Benny.
Yeah, a couple of questions. I mean, I know we've got these long-term loans that we can't pay back. How much longer have we got on those loans? What is the term of those that's left, please?
So I just prepared earlier. Okay, so we have 2 loans with the PWB, one for £2 million, which is currently running at 6 7/8 interest, which was taken out on the 3rd of February 1994 and matures on the 1st of February 2029. So obviously we've got about 7 years left on that one. And we have another loan with the PWB of £2.5 million, that's 7 5/8%, which was taken out on 13th of March 1997 which matures on the 13th of March 2032. So we have 10 years left on that one. And then we also have a loan with Barclays of 3.3 million, which started on the 18th of March 2004, which doesn't mature. The latest possible maturity date is 18th of March 2054. That was a 50-year loan at 4.7%. Now, at the time in 2004, 4.7% was a very good interest rate. In fact, at the dates that all these were fixed, they were all very good interest rates. But then, who knew what was going to happen the next 20 odd years? Nobody would have thought the interest rates were coming down this low. It's just extraordinary, the interest rates they just started creeping up a bit. Obviously, with the bank base rate going up, yields go up, and those are the B rates will go up, and they've sneaked up by the longer term rates have sneaked up by 0.5% as well, but they're still only about 2.2% for 50-year loans, which is extraordinary rates.
Thank you very much. I mean, I fully understand when they were taken out that they were good rates. Bearing in mind that inflation is above 5% at the moment, really bank rates should be, if not matching them, should be matching them as they go up. Bank rates should go up because as much as when you have a mortgage, it's very nice to have a low interest rate, but there's also a lot of pensioners, a lot of savers out there who rely on their investments to come in, and those investments have been very, very poor over the last 20 years. I read somewhere, and I can't remember where over the last few days, that there is possibility that inflation could hit 7%. Whether it does or not, I mean, we're all speculating, and the whole stock market is speculation. But when you look at those kind of figures, that makes these figures look rather small to where it could go, and that will have an effect on council finances as well. I mean, when you're looking at a crystal ball, you can only give your best figure and till it plays out. But I look at those, and I wonder if some of those figures are a little bit on the optimistic side for remaining where they are. I just wondered if any other members had any thoughts along those lines, or if you do, Mark.
Well, certainly the inflation forecasts are not looking good over the next few months, and even probably over the next year. It's going to take a little while, even if prices still stay the same, remember the same. It's going to take another year to work its way out of the system in terms of the inflation of it. So they are concerning. Certainly the base rates seem to be, they've obviously worked those into those figures. So I'm not quite sure what these experts use to reduce these figures, but certainly the last 20 years, virtually every forecast they've done has been wrong, and I'm pretty certain that this won't be right either. But that's what we pay our advisors for, to actually give us this advice. But obviously the thing is you have to be quite reasonable, prudent, or whatever you want to call it, in terms of where you think our investment returns are going, and who we invest with, and what sort of return we're going to get back from that. In terms of the property funds, I mean, that will be determined by how they invest it and where that returns come from. But they are two very good funds that we're investing with, so we're quite confident that we're going to get some decent return on that. I think it's about our own cash, about what we do with that, really, about how we can maximise that, given the where the bank base rate might go.
Looking at the Bank of England, when the last rate rise came, or sorry, the previous one, it was a vote that was more people wanted to put it up. Yeah, they wanted more put on, and I look at these figures. I personally think they're a little bit pessimistic to where it may go, but that's just my personal view. And I will be able to the professionals who earn an awful lot more than me
Certainly the table that you've got in your report, there will be a different table that will appear in the council report, because that's the one that you've got in the report was their view going in sort of December time. So we did, but now they've updated that, which will show an increase in the bank base rates. But how that reflects through in terms of what our investment returns are, who knows? And then none of those are certain, but like you say, all the indications are that they will be increased. They will be higher than what they are there.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Matt.
Any further questions, speakers? Okay, therefore, the recommendation is the Audit and Risk Management Committee to endorse the strategy to be included in the final budget report. Please raise your hands if you endorse the strategy to be included in the final budget report. Thank you, members. Agenda item number 8, Internal Audit Plan 21-22, Progress Report Quarter 3. And I'll pass you over to Kathy to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. So agenda item 8 is the progress report, and you can find that on page 63 of your agenda packs. So this report provides committee with an outline on the progress that we've made to date on delivery of our audit plan for this financial year, and also some points around staffing and some of the work that the team are undertaking at the moment. So section 2 is a staffing update. When we brought the restructure proposals to the committee that were approved, we discussed an additional strand of income and an opportunity for us to explore some income generation within our audit team. And I think at the last report I gave you, I provided you with a bit of an update that we were exploring some opportunities. Since that meeting, we have been approached by the Water Management Alliance, who have asked us to provide some internal audit service work for them. So the Water Management Alliance is a consortium of 7 internal drainage boards. Their head office is based in Kings Lynn. What they've asked for us to provide is 7 days a year of internal audit service, which will generate a small amount of income back to the authority for that. I've worked with the Water Management Alliance before, so it's work that I'm familiar with. And their committees for each drainage board have approved appointing me as their internal auditor for 7 days a year, which isn't a huge amount of time, so it won't take a massive amount of time out of our audit work plan, but it will generate some additional income to the council. So I'm really pleased to be able to report that to you today. Section 3 of the report goes through the monitoring of the internal audit plan. This is a fairly standard section in the report. One thing I have added to the report this year, this quarter, is a few stats on the numbers of reports that we've issued. So far this year, we've issued 9 final reports, and 6 are currently at draft stage, so they will be issued in the next week or 2. There are 11 audits ongoing and 2 audits that will need to carry forward into next year. Now, the reason I'm going to need to carry 2 audits forward into next year is because we're still providing support in response to COVID-19, particularly around business grants. So, as you may be aware, government provided us with additional funding for the Omicron, businesses affected by the Omicron variant, and I've been working with Mark and his finance team around some of that work. Obviously, that has had a slight impact on our audit plan this year. But I think one thing that is really important to note is that even though I will be bringing forward 2 audits into next year, we've still achieved, this year we will achieve more audits than we have done over the last 3 years within this financial year. So we're still in a really positive place with what we've done. So we've got full complement of staff now. Hopefully the work that we need to do supporting the council's COVID-19 response is getting less and less. And hopefully there's going to be no more variants and no more grants, but that's just fingers crossed. But we have achieved a huge amount of work already this year. So 3.6 on your reports details the audits that have been completed, and Appendix A gives you the results of those completed audits. 3.7 details all of the audits that are currently ongoing. And at 3.8, I just highlighted there some additional work that the audit team have been involved in this year, which is outside of the work of the audit plan. So primarily around COVID-19 business grants work, National Fraud Initiative work, which is crucial to what the service provides to the council, and obviously some work that I've been working with finance on, the external auditor appointment process. So in the table at Appendix A of the completed audits, one thing I have added this time is I've put a lot more narrative into this report for you to give you a bit more of an idea about the work we're actually undertaking within those audits. It's a very difficult balance to provide you with enough information for you to gain assurance on the work that the audit team are doing without putting sensitive or confidential information into the public domain. But hopefully what we've done here in this report is hit that balance right to give you enough information on the work that we're doing. And hopefully you see this as an improvement to the reporting that I'm providing to the committee. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Thank you, Cathy. Any comments? Can I just take a proposer for the report, please? Councillor Benny, another seconder? Councillor Purser, thank you. Now open this item for discussion. Sorry, was it Councillor Benny first?
Okay, thank you for the work you've done. I see you've got fraud investigation work there. Maybe a little bit outside the remit, but there is certainly the business grants that have been paid out. There is from central government, they are now looking and chasing down the fraudulent claims, and there will be fraudulent claims in there. Are we doing any work to chase down any fraudulent claims for money that we've paid out during the COVID grant schemes? And what are we doing if we are, please?
So yes, in answer to your question, we are doing a lot of work on looking at whether or not we have made any fraudulent claims. We work with BAYS, so another government department. They're specifically requesting samples of our work and the grants that we've paid out. One of the things that we did that a lot of authorities didn't do with their business grants, and we pride ourselves on the work that we put in pre-payment, is we have done an awful lot of pre-payment checks on businesses rather than post-payment, which is what a lot of authorities have had to do. So the number of fraudulent cases we have found have been 0. I have my audit team, and we've been able to fund a resource for a few number of days this year to support us with this work. We work with the National Fraud Initiative. We've supplied some of our data sets to them, and they've responded to us, which looks at things like bank account details, whether businesses have been trading or not trading, for us to match to our data sets to make sure that we can provide post-payment assurance. In the audit plan this year, I did have 20 days for post-payment assurance work to support their work on business grants. That's ongoing. That will come to the committee in the year-end report, the work that we've done on post-payment assurance work. There have been a few grants that have been paid out in error that have not been fraudulent. So obviously the difference between fraudulent and error of those. And you know, I'm really pleased to say that the work that obviously working with finance on these business grants, we've undertaken a lot of work to support this, because it's new to everybody, which was why we put 20 days into the audit plan to support that level of work.
Thank you.
Can I just add to that, Councillor Benny? I mean, the point I'd like to make here is, do you remember in the early days, if we go back to April 2020, they were publishing league tables of all the councils that had put all the grants out, and we weren't very high up on that league table at the beginning. But that's now coming to fruition because we didn't just throw the money out the door. We had some reasonableness checks in, and I think now, from what Cathy's reporting, we were right to do that. Because interestingly, they don't now publish league tables of who's got the most fraudulent claims. So the point I'm making is we weren't very high on the league tables in getting the money out as early as some others, but actually we're now right up there in terms of all our money's gone out in a pretty correct and proper fashion. So I commend that.
Thank you very much, Peter. I remember at the time we were discussing this, and I knew we were slightly behind at putting them out for the same reasons I was going to say to them. I mean, it's good news that we have had 0 fraudulent claims in here for something of the scale and the amount of money that's passed through our bank account in this process, and the speed at which it had to be delivered when there was no template or guidelines as to what we do. We were writing the policy as it went along. I think that's very commendable. I'd like to say thank you very much for the team for what you've done. I'm pleased it's zero. I was also told that we had some businesses that actually sent the money back to us, and they said that no, they didn't feel it was right to take that money morally, and they were successful. They were businesses, they didn't need the money, and they weren't prepared to take money out of the public purse. And I think businesses like that should also be commended for taking that moral standpoint, which I think is good. But it's nice to know that we have businesses throughout Fenland that took that stance. To turn free money down goes against the grain to most people, but it was nice to see that we had those kind of businesses in Fenland, and thank you to them, whoever they were.
Councillor Wicks, do you want to come in?
Yes, I'd like to commend the internal audit team for the period that this report covers. It's got to be some of the most traumatic times that they've had to deal with. What has come out at the end of this is a very positive, set of achievements. Seeing as, not being funny, I'm dead sure the original template that was in place had to be thrown out the door fairly quickly to deal with the exceptional circumstance we found ourselves in. So they should be highly commended on the work that they've done over this period of time.
Councillor Hoy, did you want to come in?
Yeah, a couple of points. First one was on the Appendix A on the housing standards. I just wondered, is it possible perhaps in future, and if you've already done this and I've missed it, then I apologise, to share with the portfolio holders when you do these in their areas, because it'd be quite useful, I suppose, to know what's, particularly in that area, because we recently changed the process. And it's good to see that obviously it's seems to be going okay, and you've not found any kind of concerns with it. It'd be quite useful, I think, to know. I mean, I personally don't know about other people, but I'd find it quite interesting to know kind of what you looked at and what you found. So if there is anything that we need to correct, we can. If we know what's going well, we know what's going well. And then the second point was kind of on the same thing. Who decides what processes are audited, and can you add a process? And the reason I'm asking is linked to, not trying to give you more work, but just linked to this housing standards and the change of process. What we're finding now is actually levying the fines themselves, and we've got the process in place to do that, but actually the collection of the fines, and it's kind of, is there maybe is that something that we could audit and look at, how we can, because it's not that we're doing, I don't think we're necessarily doing anything wrong, but at least we need to understand kind of the process, and can anything be changed or can it not, and things like that.
So on your first point about portfolio holders, I think that's a brilliant idea. It's not something that we currently do, but I can certainly discuss that with the service managers, because obviously the reports are issued to them, and I can certainly discuss that with the corporate management team and see how we can move that forwards, because it can't hurt. The more people who see our findings, then obviously I'm keen to promote that work that the team are doing. On the second point, so who decides what gets audited? So just a very brief run through. We have our audit plan, which is a 5-year plan. Various services get audited throughout that 5-year plan. When we come to audit the individual services, we try to do wholesale audits of everything. In relation to the point you're making about the collection of debts, we do have a audit ongoing at the moment, and we're working with, we have a corporate debt project at the moment where we are specifically looking at how we collect debts corporately across the organisation. It's something that has been on our horizon for a while that we're aware of. So yes, it is being looked at. Yes, it is under review, and yes, a report will come back to this committee on that. And again, will be fed through to all the relevant people who need to be aware of any changes that need to be made in our processes and how we can collect those debts to benefit us the most.
Councillor Hoy, I think 2 good points you made there. I know you're a substitute member here, because the audit plan does come here, the internal audit plan, and it gets signed off here. which is really useful. But I would also say that if there are things that like that you're worried about, because we always have spare days in the internal audit plan. So if you emailed Kathy, myself, anyone, we could, if there are areas any councillor or any member is concerned about, we could certainly do looking at a certain process if there were reasons to do that. So be more than happy to take that.
Do you want to?
On that, I think it'd be quite useful to know. It's useful to know that actually, because we often get asked things about how something works, or people sometimes make a complaint, often unfairly, to be honest, as to how something works. And it'd be quite useful to be able to say, actually, no, audit has looked at this and this is what they found. That'd be quite a useful thing, I think. So thank you.
Councillor Persson, did you want to come in?
Yeah, and the wind blowing at my sails in a funny sort of way, really. But I was just actually wondering at that particular time if Councillor Benny was actually proposing a vote of thanks to Kathy, Mark and Peter there and all the team there for all their hard work. And if he was actually proposing a vote of thanks, I was actually going to second it. But then I say Councillor Wicks came in and added a bit more to it as well. So I was going to probably second both of those. So take your pick on that one, really. But that's all I was going to say. I was actually to second and congratulate all the team there for all their hard work and keeping the whole council shipshape in the, some very, very difficult times.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have any other comments or questions? No, thank you. So no further speakers. Therefore, the Audit and Risk Management Committee are asked to note the report. Thank you. Can you please raise your hands if you agree to note this report? Thank you, members. Agenda item 9, Corporate Risk Register Quarterly Update. And now a call upon Stephen, Head of ICT Digital Resilience, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update to this committee on the latest corporate risk register. You'll find in your packs at page 73 a copy of the latest register, which has been reviewed by the Corporate Risk Management Group, Heads of Service and the Corporate Management Team. As usual, all changes are highlighted in green. So if I could take you through these changes, starting on page 82, risk number 8. The first 2 amendments on this page are no more than a name change of our transformation programme. This has been changed from My Fenland, as the programme now encompasses all council services and not just our customer services team. The next highlighted area confirms that phase 2 of this corporate programme has now been completed and the work has started on delivering the next phase. The last comment on this page confirms that the corporate budget for 21-22 and the medium-term financial strategy is due to be presented to full council later this month. Moving on to page 85, risk number 4. Just one comment added here, noting that we've built in further resilience around our remote access infrastructure. Page 87. This is risk number 16. A comment has been added in relation to actions agreed from our latest staff wellbeing survey. As you'll see, these include all managers being invited to attend a mental health first aid course, all other employees being invited to a mental health awareness course, all new employees being required to attend this training as part of their induction programme, and that we'll be upskilling our managers to assist in the management of a remote workforce and supporting the wellbeing of their teams. Moving on to page 89. Risk number 1. We're still lacking detail around the resources and waste strategy and any impact this may have on our waste collection and treatment practices. This detail is now expected to be received in the next couple of months. Also on that same page, a mention of the Elections Bill 2021, which includes additional considerations relating to voter identification, postal and proxy voting measures, accessibility of polls, overseas electors, as well as several other changes listed there. On page 91, risk number 11, fraud and error committed against the council. A comment has been added explaining that we've started carrying out post-payment assurance in relation to COVID grant payments. This process has already been explained by Kathy a few minutes ago. Page 93, risk number 14. The first three highlighted sections duplicate those already mentioned on page 82. An additional line has been added at the end of the comments section referring to the ongoing accommodation review, stating that the outcome of the project could deliver cost avoidance opportunities in respect of repairs which need to be completed on this building. On page 95, risk number 19, we've noted that our Chief Executive, Paul Med, now provides staff with updates on projects and day-to-day business through a new vlog. This also offers staff an opportunity to ask questions through an additional channel. Moving on to page 97, risk number 21. In relation to business continuity during the COVID pandemic, a comment has been added to inform you that the environmental services team has been actively recruiting to fixed term posts to ensure continuity of their service. And pages 99 and 100, risks number 5 and 7, we've updated the comment showing that 92% of office-based staff have the necessary equipment to be able to work from home. And also on page 100, the inherent impact and likelihood scores have been amended in relation to the risk of service delivery being affected due to not being able to access council buildings. Page 101, risk number 15. These comments repeat the progress with the corporate transformation program, which we've already mentioned earlier in the document. And finally, a decision was taken to remove risk number 2, which related to the uncertainties around Brexit, as any remaining issues will now be managed as business as usual. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Can I have a proposer for that report, please? Councillor Hoy, a seconder, please. Councillor Benny. And now open this item for discussion. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Councillor Benny.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the corporate risk register on risk 8, which is on page 82. We have a risk to council of funding changes make council unsustainable. Risk if no action taken is red. The current risk is still red. I wondered what officers were doing to try and reduce that risk to get that back to so it looks better on the paperwork and it also reduces the risk. What we were doing with that one. Peter or Mark, I'd like to take that one, please.
I think, Councillor Benny, I think that the problem we've got with that, and you'll see when we publish the budget papers, is, and we're repeating a lot of the stuff I've put in the last, God knows how many budget papers, is all these reviews that are still outstanding. Business rates, new homes bonus, the fair funding, all of those. So I think there's still quite a lot of unknowns. So as you know, when you put a budget together, there's lots of assumptions and best guesstimates and things like that. But I think personally, the biggest risk for us is, I think, the business rates potential review and what they're going to do, because that represents a significant amount of income for us at this point in time. So I think, from my point of view, until we know we've got some certainty of where some of those are going, they're big numbers in our accounts, business rates, new homes bonus, etc. So I think the mitigation is we constantly monitor, we look at the best assumptions, we talk to local government, we talk to everybody. But so I think it'll be difficult to bring that much lower because we do all we can do.
No, thank you very much. It's just, to me, that is the only one that with no mitigation is still red. And if it is, it is. You can't change it. It is what it is, and that's out of our hands. But just, it's reassuring, and also lets members know that you are doing everything, which I'm sure you are, Peter.
Yeah.
You are. It's just, it would if we could get that one down, we'd be into, yeah, that would look a lot better on the report. But also to the fact that, you are doing what you can, and that's out of our control. There's nothing we can do about that. So
I think that's
that won't just be this council, that'll be every council. If
Yeah,
those new homes
exactly.
bonuses and business rates change, if they take the money away on one hand, we would like to think that that money would be compensated somewhere else. If not, there's going to be a lot of councils in a bad way, but that's fine.
Absolutely. I think it's the uncertainty and the unknowns, Councillor Benny, why we put that in. I mean, Mark and myself don't have sleepless nights, or we don't sit here tearing our hair out and we think we get a reasonably balanced budget together every year. But, they're known unknowns, because we know they're going to happen. We just don't know what is going to happen to them.
Any other comments? No, thank you, members. No further speakers, therefore the recommendation is for the Audit and Risk Management Committee to agree the corporate risk quarterly update. Please raise your hands if you approve the quarterly update. Thank you, members. Agenda item number 10 is the Audit and Risk Management Committee work plan. We've got some dates in there with some items. So we've got some items there with no dates. It's just we're waiting for the new municipal year and the dates to come forward. I think we're planning on another training session the next meeting, are we? No, okay.
I don't think so.
No, okay. Okay. Just for
Unless, of course,
no.
members request one.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Just note that then, members. Thank you. Agenda item number 11, items of topical interest. I believe there are none. Agenda item number 12, items which the chairman has under item 3 deemed urgent. I believe there are none. This therefore marks the end of the meeting. Thank you, members.